County Sports Hall of Fame Committee, Mr. Eric Zimbauer. Eric.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bedford Elks Country Club for the 2013 Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony. From that very first class in 2006, the Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame has inducted over 80 individuals, teams, and organizations. Also, many student athletes and community supporters have been recognized for their accomplishments and contributions. We are lucky here in Bedford County. Our sports history and heritage is second to none. From the small villages of Centerville to Woodbury, Artemis, Pavey, and Defiance, to the Cove of either Friends or Morrisons, to our beautiful mountains of Tussey, Wills, Evitts, Dunnings, and Schaefer, to our grand boroughs of Everett, Saxton, Hyman, and Bedford. We have a lot to be proud of here. Let it be known, on this day, June 29, 2013, we honor this class of inductees for your sacrifice, dedication, and achievements. This is your moment, that special moment to remember, reflect, and most important, to celebrate. For those in the audience, as you hear these stories, you are going to learn things you never knew. That's the great part of this, hearing our great sports history. So now, sit back and enjoy the evening. You heard from him here. He's Mr. John Topper, our Master of Ceremonies. He's one of our great educators, sports heroes, coaches, and he never met a stranger. So I'd like to introduce Mr. John Topper.
Thank you. That's a good cowboy introduction. I like it. Never met a stranger. All right. Well, if you look in your program, and we're going to start off with our Special Recognition Awards. And these are folks who have been so active over the years in their communities and in their area in Bedford County that have contributed so much to the sports in their respective areas and in their respective towns and school districts. And we're going to start off here with a guy that I coached years ago. He wasn't able to be with us tonight. Very, very sad that he couldn't be here because he was one of the best I know that I had ever coached over the years in football. And that's Mr. Barry Wessler. So even though Barry could not be here tonight, I'm just checking quick with Bill. Do we have anyone that's going to accept for Barry tonight as far as the special recognition? Okay, we'll take care of that with Barry. If you look in your program, just read along with me quickly. These are very short. Barry Wessler has been a longtime supporter of athletics in the Bedford area for many years. He played high school football, basketball, and baseball at Bedford High School, and as a senior in 1970, Barry led the Bedford football team in rushing and tackles. He also played fast-pitch softball in the 70s and 80s. As the owner of Wrestler's Automotive and Towing, Barry has sponsored and helped coach youth league teams for many years. Barry has been very supportive of all the Bedford youth athletic programs for over 40 years. From the Bedford Area School District, let's have a hand for him tonight, even though he's not with us, Mr. Barry Wessler. From the Chestnut Ridge School District, special recognition, special community award this year goes to Dr. Eric Weaverling. Dr. Weaverling has been a longtime supporter of the Ridge School District and the athletic program. He's a graduate of Chestnut Ridge and a former wrestler for the Lions. He's been a school district doctor for many years and a team doctor for the athletic program. And along with providing physical exams for all athletes, he's been on the field for many football games over the years as the game doctor. Being a former wrestler, he's very interested in making sure the wrestlers are in the proper weight classes, and he's at the school in the preseason to establish the weights. Dr. Weaverling has been very supportive of community athletic programs for many years, and is a true Chestnut Ridge fan and a member of the community, truly deserving of this honor. Dr. Eric Weaverling, would you come up here, please? Dr. Weaverling not here? Here he comes. I thought he was here. Now, just to expedite things a little bit, as Dr. Weaverling comes up here and gets his award, presented here by our man Eric Zembauer. Two Erics. Congratulations again. Dr. Eric Weaver. Will you folks okay, there's the steps. You're all set. As I call the next person's name, come on up and you'll be ready to accept your award as soon as I finish reading your little bio, okay? Next person from Claysburg Kimmel School District, come on up, Jack Burkett. Varsity and junior high wrestling coach from 1981 to 1985, instrumental in preserving the wrestling program at Claysburg Kimmel, coached junior high and varsity wrestling in lieu of eliminating the programs, and coached the first PIAA state qualifier from Claysburg Kimmel in 1982. Currently an avid supporter of the Claysburg Kimmel Outstanding Wrestling Program, Jack Burkett. Well, I guess we'll get a picture of you here, Jack. See if Bill can check that camera level. All right, thank you, Jack. Next person, and he can come up here from the Everett Area School District. Our special community award goes this year to Bill Zimmerman. Bill Zimmerman graduated from Everett High School in 1954 and attended Lock Haven State Teachers College. He was an Everett School Board Director, which he held for several years, and served in the Everett Borough Council, and while he is currently a member of the Borough of Everett Area Municipal Authority. He helped acquire funding for the new sidewalks and streetlights for downtown Everett, as well as funding and construction of the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. Bill did this while operating a family-owned hardware store that assists do-it-yourself customers, as well as supports many local organizations and the athletic teams in Everett. Coaching his grandson's youth tackle football team for 2 years is one of Bill's most memorable service endeavors. Mr. Bill Zimmerman. Next man on the list that could not be with us tonight due to some health problems, but standing in for Chris Stoner, representing Hyman Junior Senior High School, is a former star of his who is also a current member of our Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame. Accepting for Chris will be Mr. My buddy back here, Mr. Bruce May. So I'm going to read Chris's bio here. Following graduation from Slippery Rock University, where he was a three-sport athlete, Chris Stoner accepted his first teaching and coaching assignment at Hyman Junior Senior High School in 1951. Stoner inherited a basketball program in its second year of scholastic competition, but soon built the Hornet Round Ball program into one of the finest in the area and won 3 District 5 Class C championships. And during the golden years of Hornet basketball in the 50s, he coached Bruce May, John Keller, and Royce Waldman, all members of the Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame. And accepting tonight for Chris is Mr. Bruce May. Thank you, Bruce. From the Northern Bedford School District, I saw this guy as he walked in tonight, brought back memories of an old-timers wrestling tournament where he tore up my once good knee. But that's okay. Ivan Steele, representing the Northern Bedford School District. Ivan Steele was hired and began the varsity wrestling program at Northern Bedford in the 64-65 school year. He coached the team to winning records in each of his 2 seasons as varsity coach before moving on to Solanco High School, where he continued as a head wrestling coach for 16 years, and he built a great program. Ivan coached the school's first individual district champion in Eric Martin in 1965 and followed that up with Don Conley in 1966 before he left NBC. The wrestling program has flourished and is very popular at Northern Bedford, and it can all be traced back to the gracious contributions of our first coach, Mr. Ivan Steele. Oh yeah, I was on crutches that night. He really did. I've only had that operated on twice, Ivor. And from Tussey Mountain School District, they call them the Huffy Twins. Ron Hoffman and Don Hoffman. Ron and Don Hoffman, better known as the Huffy Twins, have been active spectators of many Tussey Mountain sporting events over the years. At any given boys or girls event, you can usually count on one, if not both of these brothers, to be there. For the last 35 plus years, Ron and Don have managed the sideline yard markers at every Tussey Mountain home football game. The Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame honors both these men for their many years of dedication and enthusiasm. Ron and Don Hoffman, the Huffy Twins. Let's see if we can get these Huffy Twins in here, Bill, where we can get a good picture. Way to go, guys. All right, as we go down into our program now, and we're maybe 10 minutes over, but that's okay. We'll make it up here someplace. But we're going to start off here tonight with our first inductee for this year, 2013, into the Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame. And as you look in your program, you can see a man that really was quite a legend in many sports, and we're talking about from the Bedford School District and also representing Everett. Really, when you think about it, you read over his bio, and we're talking about the late Bruce Fisher. Presenting tonight for Bruce Fisher will be Bill Krebs and Ned Freer, both members of the Bedford Sports Hall of Fame Committee.
Thank you, John. Bruce Fisher brought an unforgettable excitement to Bedford. The year the war ended. 68 years later, I can still feel it, and I'm pretty sure that's why Bill got me into this job, because not everyone was around then. The war years had been a hard time. Rationing, separation, death, uncertainty. There wasn't always gas for rides home after practice in those days. Some of the boys hitchhiked. And a lot of them walked a mile or more even living in town. Maybe that's why they were in such good shape. But in 1944, a new coach moved into a house less than a block from the high school, which is where a lot of good coaches live. Bruce Fisher, a native of the Clearville area, and I'll say at this point, he always said Robinsonville when he came to visit at the Gazette later on, and he was good at that. He gave the town a new feeling in the 1944 season. It was a winning record, 6-2-1, and that was news, because Bedford had not had winning seasons for a while, although they had some great ones in the more distant past. They had some good-looking boys come back, some big men like Dan Budd, Bob Hirschberger, a passer like Bud Fisher, a runner like Chuck Waters, a good running end like Jack Faust, and some of these names have been honored here in recent years. There was optimism in the air that August. There were 11 lettermen and a squad of 70. And then the Japanese surrendered, and there was a lot of great feeling out of that. The war was over. Dads and brothers and uncles would be coming home, and the Bedford boys came out and pounded Boswell 55-0, and the excitement really started to grow. Us little kids knew nobody could beat Coach Fisher's boys, and they won every game as the season progressed, and no one scored a point against them. Then they traveled to Ferndale, where Coach Fisher had built a strong system in his 19 years there. There was a crowd of 5,000 at Point Stadium for the Bedford-Ferndale game, and it rained hard. There were not many Bedford fans in that crowd. Then something bad happened. Bedford fumbled deep in its own territory and Ferndale scored the first touchdown of the year. Would Ferndale be able to snatch the perfect season away? Bedford was losing for the first time. But these boys were men. Burl Nave scored in the third quarter. Bud Fisher took care of business, scoring the final touchdown, and Bedford won, 13-6. They went on to have their undefeated season, one touchdown. Few of us are still around who remember that year. I was young, but I remember what a little boy could know about it. We kids on the hill up Juliana Street heard some fun stories from Big Bob Hirschberger, who played tackle beside Gene Hawker, and was a wonderful big brother to kids several years younger. I had the advantage also of remembering times Coach Fisher in retirement would come to my office to talk and bring a daughter or one of his inventions to show me. What I remember is a man who was lean and raw-boned. At a glance, you saw a man who looked fit, a man to respect. He looked strong. His hands looked like they could handle horses or big angry tackles and fullbacks. He had been a tackle and a fullback, and in his late 40s and 50s, when he came to Bedford, he still looked like an athlete. He was animated, confident, full of good humor. He always had something interesting to talk about. Never just aimless chatter the way some people did when they came to your office. I remember one time at practice in the old auditorium, Coach upset at one basketball player running down the court, heedless of the team, not looking for a pass. Coach fired a ball at the boy's back and hit him pretty smartly. He paid attention, the boy did, from then on. He never made you feel small. One of his boys told me, he built you up, he got results. Coach Fisher was not crude or harsh. He was the kind of man who commanded respect. He had a way with people. He wanted you to be better. He was tough, but kind. In 3 seasons, I think it was just 3, Bill. Bruce Fisher, 5. Okay, that's what happens to memory. Bruce Fisher produced teams that won 37 games, lost 7, and tied 3 games. Phenomenal record. He had 3 basketball teams here which won 81 games and lost 22. One man with forceful presence had brought unparalleled success to Bedford. Unfortunately, he moved on after 3 years to become football coach and then athletic director at a new jointure, Penn Hills in Allegheny County, outside Pittsburgh. When he retired after 41 years, Coach Fisher was proud of his team's accomplishments, but equally proud of the achievements of his children and the fact that he had prepared them for life. And one big satisfaction, he said, was the fact that not one of the boys in his athletic programs had ever been in any serious trouble with the law. Many were in teaching or coaching professions and doing excellent jobs. This is the real reward of coaching and teaching, he said. Interesting, and I wasn't thinking about the news coming out of the NFL or some of the other big teams when I made note of that. Coach Fisher's son, Bud, whom we honored last year, was a college football player, quarterback at BPI in Virginia. Bud became a jet fighter pilot for 5 years after graduation. His daughter Sally was Miss Florida in 1956. Bruce Fisher himself was product of a one-room school. He went out on his own to college, played several sports, some for 6 years, at the college level. He played at Millersville and Juniata. He was chosen honorable mention All-America in 1924. The next year, he began a 19-year stint at Ferndale, where he won 106 games and lost 40 against tough competition. To select any particular team and say it was the best would be difficult to do, he said on retirement. The 30, 31, 32 football teams at Ferndale stand out with a 26-game undefeated record, and 2 of these teams had but 6 points scored against them. The 36 team won the Class B conference. The 1937 team won the Western Pennsylvania Conference. 38, 39, 40, 41 teams lost but 4 games. And the 1945 team at Bedford scored 326 points to their opponents' 6. 2 boys on that squad were picked for all-state teams, Jack Faust and his son Bud. The 1949 and 1955 teams at Penn Hills High won 6 of 9 against the toughest competition in the WPIAL. His basketball teams won 334 games and lost 200 for a 72% success rate. His track teams at Ferndale were as successful as the football and basketball teams. His own testimony when he was honored at the War Memorial at the close of his active coaching career in 1955, his testimony was about the qualities of sport. I have always been a believer that sports develop the best qualities in youth. I am proud of the sports programs which we have developed in the schools and communities that I have served in during the years, particularly on the expanded program here at Penn Hills. He wanted to help make young people physically fit and instill in them an interest in taking part in sports programs. If sports are good for some, they are good for all in taking part. Young people need a sense of belonging. Playing on a team helps satisfy that want. I wish this did not have to be a posthumous award, that it could be possible to present more of the details and the anecdotes about Coach Fisher's life. He was a man's man, a man of ideals, ambition, yes, confidence, very much. He made great steps from a one-room country school to a large new jointure in the heart of Western Pennsylvania football country. Coach Fisher was in Bedford for just a few years, but they were years not to be forgotten, and we honor his memory tonight.
I think Ned said about everything that I was going to say. I was there crossing off. But I want to tell one story. Ned was in 4th grade when Coach Fisher came, I think his first year or second year. And he got in a little bit of trouble at school. And the principal said that he could not come to the football game unless he had a parent come with him. His mother, with a young son, young baby, I guess that was Gus, brought him to the football game. And Ned stayed out of trouble the rest of the time. So, thank you, Ned, for becoming a good guy. I will say, the 1945 team has now 4 people in our Sports Hall of Fame. Coach Fisher, his son Bud, Jack Faust, and of course the 1945 team. He would not say that was his best team, but in the county here, it was one of the best teams. In closing, when he retired, he moved back to the Clearfield area where he owned a farm. And this was his quote. If I was alive, he would say, there is always one place you can find me or get in touch with me. And that is over at my farm in the Clearfield area. And I'm sure he would be very honored to accept this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Ned, and thank you, Bill, for fine remarks about a legend around this whole area. Before I go on to Floyd Robinette, I do want to mention, if some of you look at your programs, Sam informed me, they are the same color as a previous program. So you may be looking at your program saying, I don't even know who these guys are talking about. If you happen to not have the 2013 program, don't panic. You'll be able to get one from my buddy Sam right over here at the door. So rather than leaping up right now and going and getting it, you will be able to exchange it and get your program. So if you do not have a 2013 program, Sam will take care of you later. Right now, I would like to ask Mr. Jeff Batesville to come forward. And Jeff is going to be the presenter for Floyd Robinette.
I'd like to congratulate all the Hall of Fame inductees for tonight's program and start by saying that I'm truly honored this evening that the Robinette family has asked me to speak on behalf of the late Floyd Robinette, who's one of the all-time great standout football players in the history of Replogle High School, which is now a part of Northern Bedford County School District. Floyd was a 3-year starter at Replogle, and his senior year they went 9-1. He was on the very first Bedford Gazette all-county team, and I believe earlier Bill Zimmerman came up here from Everett, and if I'm not mistaken, he was the quarterback on that all-county team the very first year the Gazette did that. Floyd also won the coveted blanket award at Replogle his senior year. That was a real big deal at the time. And one of the county coaches in one of the articles called Floyd, without question, the best lineman in our area. He was also an outstanding punter. He had an 80-yard punt in a game against Roaring Spring. I don't know if anyone's ever had a longer punt in a high school game in the state ever, but that's got to be in the top 5 or 10, I would think. He was a big, strong guy, 6'3", 230. They would put him at running back occasionally, and he scored 2 touchdowns his senior year as well. Teammate Harold Crawford remembers the Tank. They called him the Tank. Okay? It just says, Harold said he was just one hell of a blocker. He was just a man among boys. Another teammate and close personal friend of his, Kenny Waller, to this day says that he was hit harder by the Tank daily in practice than in any game in his 3-year career. Hard work was a term used by everyone I talked to regarding Floyd. Mentioned earlier in Mr. Fisher's presentation about the kids having to walk home after practice. Kenny Walter told me that, those guys, it wasn't unusual for them to walk 2-3 miles home after practice. Going to school all day, going through a difficult practice, and then walking home. Well, and Floyd went even beyond that. He worked apparently a night shift in the brickyard over at Sproul, in addition to going to school and playing football and all that stuff. So maybe that took the place of lifting weights during that era. Another story, Kenny Waller, and Kenny's here tonight. He was sharing some pictures with the family earlier and gave you a lot of good info here. Apparently Kenny and Joe Walker and Tank were employed, and you Northern Bedford wrestling guys will remember this name. They were employed by Luther Rawhouse, Red Rawhouse. And one summer, their job was to dig up his cellar, okay, and get all the dirt out of there. Well, apparently, Kenny and Joe sort of conned the Tank into doing most of the work. He took all the dirt out of there and did most of the heavy work. He was apparently he was strong as an ox, is what everybody recalls about Floyd. From Replogle, Robinette was recruited by several small college programs, and he went on to Shippensburg University, and about halfway through his freshman year, he won a spot as the starting tight end. It's kind of interesting because a little later you're going to meet a young man, and we do the Scholar Athletes, Taylor Pressel, who is following 60 years later the same thing, where he's going down to Shippensburg to be a tight end. But the Tank is headed, he starts at Shippensburg at tight end, but then after 1 year there, he opts to enlist in the Navy, goes to Bainbridge training down in Maryland. And at that time, Army bases, I know this is a little unusual for some of the younger crowd, but at that time, a lot of these Army bases played a college level schedule. And Bainbridge Naval Training Center played a college level schedule, and Floyd was on the team for 2 years, and this is where he really, from what I can tell, matured and really became a great football player. You know, to give you an example, one of Bainbridge's probably the most famous alum was Charlie Choo Choo Justice, who was a Heisman Trophy winner later when he went on to North Carolina. One of the highlights of Floyd's career there, he was the captain his second year at Bainbridge, and he was on a team that tied University of Delaware 7-7, and that was a pretty good Delaware team that beat Temple and Rutgers that year. Meanwhile, out west, Coach Tony Sorty at Montana State University was building a powerhouse, and he had some big shoes to fill. He had an All-American offensive tackle by the name of Ron Warzenka that was leaving and graduated, was drafted by the pros. And he needed to fill in, you know, a position there at offensive tackle. And a fellow by the name of Charles Jackson, who had played with Floyd at Bainbridge Naval in 1955, was already at Montana State and suggested, hey, Coach, you know, I know a guy, this guy, a tank. Let's bring him in. So Coach Storty at Montana State brings in Floyd, and you can imagine in August of 1957, Floyd and his wife and his son John, you know, they head to Bozeman, Montana, okay, to play football and enter school there. This was Montana State's first year in Division I, and he played alongside an All-American center by the name of Sonny Holland, who would go on to become the winningest coach actually in Montana State history when he coached there in the 70s, and also alongside Charles Jackson, his buddy from Bainbridge, was the right guard, and he started immediately at right tackle. It didn't take him long to fit right in. And the Bobcats in 1957 had a great season. They went 8-2. Their only 2 losses were to 2 undefeated teams, Idaho State and Arizona State. Arizona State finished the season ranked number 12 in the nation, and interestingly enough, were coached by another local, semi-local legend, Frank Cush from Wimber, PA. I talked to Coach Sonny Holland, who played starting center on that team, was an All-American along with the tank on that 57 team. And first of all, he wanted me to state his heartfelt congratulations to the Robinette family on this honor. And he told me a little bit about Floyd and about that season. He said they should have beat Idaho State. And the coach was really rough on him that week after that loss, and some of the guys were grumbling, but he said you never heard a word from Floyd. He just turned up the intensity, was knocking people on their cans and kept going. And a week or so later, they won, their big rival game was against Montana, and they won what they call the Brawl of the Wild, 22-13, a big win for them over Montana. Ended up losing to Arizona State later in the season, but had a great 8-2 season. He remembers Floyd being very quiet and kind of reserved and keeping to himself, but he says he did his talking on the field. He was undoubtedly a big, fast, strong kid that belonged there, and you know, we wished he would have stayed for another year or two, but as it turns out, Floyd renewed Montana State after 1 year and returned to Pennsylvania and settled down in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, and basically his involvement in football from that point forward was coaching some youth football in the Lewistown area, pretty much limited to that. He was invited, and I saw the letter that he received. It's pretty neat, from the Los Angeles Rams. He was invited to a free agent tryout in 1959, and he turned that down. I think he told one of his sons, told me in a phone interview that he felt he could make more money driving a truck at that time. And pro football wasn't a big deal then, so it's probably true. You know, when the New Enterprise community heard about Floyd being honored tonight, it seemed to send another spark and lit another flame among the proud Rep Local football family. The played under Andy Roddy in the 1950s and sent several players into the college ranks. And the 54 undefeated team, a year after Floyd would have graduated, is already inducted into this Hall of Fame. But the inflection and the voices of the people that I talked to about Floyd, the sparkle in the eye of the people that I talked to about Floyd, it really said it all. He's undoubtedly a local legend. And sadly, Floyd passed away about 6 years ago. Tonight, his children, John, Steve, and Nancy, are here. They're present, along with some of their other family members. And at this time, I'd like to introduce his oldest son, who made that trip to Bozeman, Montana with him to accept the induction plaque, John Robinette.
I'd like to thank all of you for this. This is something that we knew nothing about as kids growing up. This really means a lot to us. Excuse me. Dad was the type of person who would keep things like this quiet. We didn't know about it. We didn't know any of this growing up. All he said was, if you're going to do something, do it right. And that's the way we live. And I'd like to thank you and thank the organization. Thank you very much.
We'd like to announce right now, since we started almost 15 minutes late, I hope Dana and all the gang understand this. We don't want to hurry to the point of cutting some people totally short. Everybody can be moving it along, but by the same token, we want to make sure we do justice to our next two inductees before dinner. And so we're talking about Walter Reed and Vaughn Lehman. So right now, that's okay with Dana, wherever he's at, and the crew at Country Kettle will just move everything back accordingly, okay? Probably be quarter after or so for dinner. Anyway, our next presenter coming up here is a member of our Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame, was my old Teener Lake coach years ago, and Vaughn's. And that is Dwayne Gokenauer, and Dwayne will be presenting for Mr. Walter Reed. There's Dwayne over here right now. Come on up. Presenting for Walter Reed. And here comes Walter. All right.
In your programs, you see the resume of Walter Reed. What I have to say about Walter is not so much about his wrestling career or his officiating career, but rather about Walter man. Walter grew up in a situation unlike any of the rest of us, and his mother was white, his brothers and sisters were white, his stepfather was white, his father was black, and as a result of that situation, throughout his life, childhood life, Walter was subject to a lot of abuse in the home situation. He told me some of the things that happened. He was sitting at the dinner table. His stepfather would often hit him and tell him, "That is for nothing." Their food, their meal, if there was any leftovers, well, the stepfather told the children to eat all the food. if there was any leftovers, Walter could have it. If there were no leftovers, Walter didn't have any meal that particular time. Walter spent many years walking from Breezewood to Graceville, and he told me he knew every tree that had any fruit or nuts on it, any bushes that had any kind of berries on it. And on his way to and from Breezewood and Graceville, he would eat some of those things, and that was all that he got to eat. In one of his high school wrestling matches over at Conway Township, third period, the score was tied, and end of the period, the buzzer sounded to end the match. Walter released his opponent. His opponent stood up. The official gave the opponent a point for escape, and it cost Walter the match, and it also cost Everett the team match. The day after his graduated from high school, Walter enlisted in the Marines. Took his basic training in the Marines at Camp Lejeune, South Carolina. When his basic training was finished, he and a couple of his buddies were waiting to get a bus to move on to or to go home on leave. And Walter suggested that they go to a restaurant and get a bite to eat while they were waiting. And one of his friends said, "They won't serve you here. You'll have to go to the back door and they'll hand you a plate of food out the door for your dinner." Walter served in Vietnam, the recipient of the Purple Heart. After his tour of duty in the Vietnam War, he joined the Baltimore police force. He became an undercover man. He later went into business, a lucrative pest control business, which he still owns and operates along with his family. Walter never complained about all the abuse and what have you from the situation in which he lived. All he would ever tell me was, "It prepared me for life." During his wrestling officiating career, he got the nickname of the Maestro of the Mats. And Walter can be a colorful person. I never saw him officiate much, but I'm sure he could put on a show as well as doing a superb job of officiating. So at this time, I'd like to present to you the Maestro of the Mats, Mr. Walter Reed.
Thank you, committee, for even putting me up for this award. I knew nothing about it. My wife says I ramble when I get in places like this and start talking, so I'm going to try not to ramble as you go from one thing to another. I appreciate you, Mr. Goodenour, for the fine presentation. I was told that over the years that I did become one of the better referees in the state of Maryland. But I think growing up really made that happen, because I learned never to take anything personally. You don't have any coaches out here, you know how y'all are. 50% on this side that love me, 50% on this side that, then where did he come from? So you learn to never take anything personally, and life goes on. I appreciate this award, and I'm not going to ramble, and I know we're running behind time, because I did really have a lot of things to say. Maybe the next time. As they say, if you stick around long enough in a sport like this, they're bound to give you something.
I tell you what, my wife and I went to see that movie 42. Maybe some of you saw it, the Jackie Robinson story. And I'm sure that just didn't even cover the highlights. And I hear that story that Dwayne shared. Dwayne, I appreciate you sharing that end of it, because you folks can read the stuff in your program and all the accolades and all the awards. But I tell you what, that is special to me when you think of what he did, and especially that story about knowing every fruit tree, every nut tree, every bush, from Breezewood to Graceville, and knowing where he could get something to eat. I'll tell you what, for you younger folks, especially in here, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Well, I was very honored when a good friend of mine, who's going to be our next inductee, asked me to present him tonight, be his presenter. And I thought, wow. And it really struck me when I was over at their house and Barb said, Vaughn wants you to present tonight. And that is a great honor to me, partner. It really is. I just was reading an article by Mike Matthews, one of the sports writers down at the Cumberland Times this week, and it really struck me. Mike had a great quote about Vaughn. He said, "The pitcher's mound is center stage on a baseball diamond, and it was only natural to find Vaughn Lehman there." Matthews went on to say, "The Hyman ace was at home on the mound, in the field, in the batter's box, and on the basketball court as well." Boy, Mike Matthews, you really said that well. I'll go a step farther today. If there was any kind of a ball involved, and I can't really speak for golf, Vaughn, because I never saw you hit a golf ball, but I guarantee you, if you tried, you would have hit it a mile. But I can speak for baseball, softball, a basketball, or a football. Vaughn Lehman could do amazing things with it. And yes, I included football, and any of you that know us guys from Hyman, we didn't have football. Now, Barry McVicker, who was one of our teammates back there, Barry's dad, Coach McVicker, back in the day, there was a football team in Hyman. I heard it was pretty good. But in our day, Vaughn and Barry, there was no football. But I'm saying right now, pick up football games around the area with some guys coming from Bedford and places like that had football. Vaughn Lehman could do it all. He could throw a perfect spiral with that thing, as far as you wanted him to throw it, with accuracy. He could run like a deer, had cutting ability, and all these things, you know, as guys that never had that chance to play that game at that time, were like, wow, he's just something else. It's just what Vaughn does. And when he was a receiver, he could catch anything. He could run it down. So if we'd had football, partner, I think you'd have been a star of that as well. I have to say, as a young guy, and we came up through Little League together, and high school baseball together, and Teener League, and I look back, and I'm going to be honest, and I think Barry would agree with me, I think Woody Deal, and any of the guys that played with Vaughn that are here, as young guys, as kids, we almost took him for granted. And maybe that sounds funny to some of you, but if you don't have anything to compare it to at that stage of your life, you just say to yourself, hey, as long as Lehman's on our team, we're going to win. It was just that simple, no matter what we played. From the grade school at Londonderry, Russ Giesler's Little League teams, right on up through. We knew as long as Lehman was on our team, if there was a ball involved, we're going to win. And we just went that way. I think back, and I think of some of our competition back then. Larry Wiles is here today, and Larry's going to be one of our inductees. I thought that was so neat because that was the crew from '61. And Vaughn and I graduated that year. So you got the three L's, we call them: Larry Wiles, Larry Hollingshead, and Larry Evans. And then guys like Ronnie Weimert. I don't know whether Ron's here or not, or whether Ron's still around, I don't know. I think of baseball up there, those Saxton guys like Butch Brown and Weimert, that bunch. I think of those guys from Bedford with the Rudisills and the McKinleys and the Sharankos, and looking up the ridge with the Slicks and the Millers, and man, oh man, just go on and on, the Ockers. And yet we look around at that era, and Vaughn Lehman, and Larry Wiles came up to see me before we started tonight, and he said, "Oh, Lehman." He said, "Lehman's one of the toughest guys we ever played against." And of course, Larry's record speaks for itself later on as he went on into college. So, as I say, I'm not a big stat guy. Never was. Bill is, and his son Billy is, and Sam is, and there are a lot of you guys that are great stat guys. But here's the way I look at it. You look at your program, kind of like Dwayne did with Walter. You look at your program for all the stats and accomplishments. And I got to just say, I know what I saw with my own eyes playing sports with this guy. And I started out as a little kid. I never forget, and Barry lived closer than I did, and he was there up at the Yotzi farm. But I'd go up a few miles up to Madley, and Sherm Lehman would be there in that yard with that big steep hill, and all the Lehman boys, and there was Vaughn, and we played baseball. So he got his original tutelage from his dad, Sherm. And I'm just happy to say that Sherm's with us tonight, and Sherm will turn 100 years young in about 4 months. I'd love to hear from you guys. Put your hands up there, Sherm. He's over there standing up, all right. But anyhow, he was the original coach for all of us, and I'll tell you what. But we were fortunate. I mentioned Vaughn, all the different teams that we were on, looking back, thinking about Russ Giesler's Little League program. He was a great coach. Thinking about the Hornet baseball and basketball programs under John Keller, and Keller's in the Hall of Fame now too. And thinking about Teener League under the tutelage of Dwayne Gokenauer, who was just up here, is in the Hall of Fame. We got some good coaching. But the key thing was, this guy here, Vaughn Lehman, had outstanding natural ability and great competitive nature. He is one of the toughest competitive guys I have ever known, and I've known a bunch of them over the years. Vaughn kept winning everywhere he went. As he progressed up the ladder in baseball, just kept on winning, on into being signed by the Giants organization in '61, the year we graduated. Suter K, great legendary sports writer down in Cumberland, touted Lehman as the next Roy Face. And I think a lot of you that look back at that era, if you remember Roy Face from the Pittsburgh Pirates, he's one of the first guys they ever called a closer. And he was about Vaughn's size. Wasn't a real big guy. Compact, muscular guy that just threw blazing heat. And that's what Lehman did. But along with his blazing heat, he also had a wicked curve and a good change. And I'll tell you what, one of the toughest you ever want to see. Later on, he became a long-time All-Star in the Penmar League. Woody Deal once told me, and Woody's here, and he's on our committee. Woody Deal said, when I was playing shortstop and Lehman was pitching for Hyman in the Penmar League, he said, you could almost fall asleep because he was that dominant. And I played outfield when he was pitching in high school, and I feel the same way. I might as well go pick daisies. And it could get kind of nasty because if somebody did get a hit, and I was the right fielder, they usually put the worst fielder in right in those days, and I was the right fielder, and so Lehman, he's firing the ball in there, and there were a lot of right-handed hitters. So you knew where the ball was coming. So I might be out there daydreaming because he's striking 10 guys out in a row, and all of a sudden here comes a rope that's slicing toward the fence there in Hyman. So that got a little tricky. So Vaughn, you were dominant, no doubt about it. Summing it all up, I've been very fortunate to be on teams over the years myself as a competitor and to coach for decades. And I've been fortunate to have been around many outstanding athletes as years went by. Looking back to my own personal experience in sports, I'd have to put Vaughn Lehman, without a doubt, in my top three all-around athletes. Two of those guys were college teammates. One of them went on to play with the Houston Astros and the New York Giants in football. So he was pro, made the bigs in football and baseball. And another one went on to knock out Dave Grayson as starting safety for the Oakland Raiders. And I put that one of the three guys in their category with Donnie Green and John Bignone is Von Lehman. So I think to myself, the third guy was a country boy that I grew up with from Madley named Von Lehman. Accepting tonight for his dad is going to be another great athlete himself, Rodney Lehman. Would you come up, Rodney, to accept for your dad? Okay, Rod says, okay. All righty. So Topper, you said enough. Rodney told me one time, he said, I'm glad you're presenting, Topper, because I didn't know Dad in those days. Well, no. Okay, if we look at our schedule right now, I check it out myself, I think it looks like dinner time, and so what we're going to do right now is get the crew out here to get things ready to go. So give them about a 10-minute window here, and when they're ready, we will start on this side. Yes? What a great idea, Sam.
I think everything is going well. We started out not knowing what was going to happen. I think Jeff Bates and a couple of us got together down at Downriver, it was about 9 years ago, and thought it was time we did something like this. And I think it's grown, which I think we probably had our biggest crowd tonight, somewhere around 320. So it's grown from about 200 to 320. Couple words. I do want to mention a couple words about a couple guys. Floyd Robinette. He's a couple years older than me, but I remember when I lived on the farm down in Snake Spring Valley, this big kid would ride his bicycle past the farm. He'd go out to Route 30, turn around and come back and go up over the mountain. It wasn't so bad, I don't think, coming down over Snake Spring Valley Mountain, but going back up, I think it would have been a haul. But I remember this was about a daily thing during the summer to get in shape. Dan Kerr, who's going to be presented later on here, close friend. We were playing ball down at Snake Spring, and Doc Snyder's Meadow, that's on the lower Valley Road, now it's just cow pasture. There was a fence in right field, and they also played baseball there. And once in a while, a baseball player would hit it over the fence. Well, Dan's a right-hand batter, and we were hitting to the right field, and man, he got into one, and he hit it over the fence. And we're all like, yes! And he's trotting to first base, and the umpire called, "You're out." And we're like, what? Danny stepped on the plate when he hit it over the fence and was called out for maybe the longest home run I ever saw hit down there. This is just some memories, and I want to invite all of you, if you know of someone that you think is worthy of being nominated to be in the Hall of Fame, see one of the board of directors with a resume, call me on the phone, email me, whatever, and we'll bring them up. Right now, I think we still have a list of around 200 and some, if I'm right. Richard down here shaking his head. So we're not going to run out of guys in the next year or so. And we're not going to run out of guys in my lifetime. But this is a great event, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. I want to thank also the board of directors, they did a much better job this year than in the past of writing up the articles, saving me a lot of headaches. Sam still got involved with some headaches with certain ones, and I want to thank Sam and Ned and some of those who edited some of the things, and I think it was a relief to me. I'm not getting any younger anymore. I'm staying the same, but not getting any younger. So, but I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. If you're interested in a DVD of the program, we will sign up over here. If in a week or so, we will get you a copy. $10. That's about it. We do have old programs and things, but I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, continuing on now with our program, and again, you folks finish up over there. Enjoy the good food. Representing the Bedford Gazette sports staff is Mr. Ryan Spring. Ryan's going to come up here now and introduce our Scholar Athletes of the Year. Ryan.
Thanks, John. First off, on behalf of the Bedford Gazette, I'd like to congratulate all of tonight's newest inductees into the Bedford County Sports Hall of Fame. And also a thank you to Bill and the rest of the Hall of Fame committee for allowing us the time to present the Athlete of the Year as we always do. 2013 was an outstanding year, while 2012 into 2013, another outstanding year in local high school sports. And before I recognize our athletes and give out our Scholar Awards for the year, I want to point out that most of you might know that Bedford County crowned a state champion this year. It happened a little over a month ago. Zach Pressel from Northern Bedford, a senior, won the Class AA state championship in the high jump. And I don't believe Zach is here tonight. His brother's here because he's being awarded with the Athlete of the Year. But I know his family's here tonight, so I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that because it's not very often that the local area produces a state champion. So a quick round of applause for Zach Pressel. So without further ado, at this time, I'd like to ask all of our Athlete of the Years from the county schools to please come up here. I think the best way to handle it is because the stage is a little packed here. We're going to go from this end of the table to that end of the table right in front of the stage here. So if everybody could come up, all of our Athlete of the Year, please. I know some of you probably just finished eating, so you might be a little slower getting up here. Okay, I believe we have a good crowd of them tonight. I know there's a few missing, but I believe we have 9 of the 14 here. And I am going to announce them all one by one, beginning by school in alphabetical order, and Cody Wyant from the Gazette, one of our other sports staffers, is going to be handing out some awards to them. I'm going to begin with Bedford. I don't believe either of them are here tonight, but I do want to honor them. Bedford's Female Athlete of the Year was Carrie Baker. Carrie competed in soccer, cross country, gymnastics, and track and field this year. She was a state qualifier in cross country and track and field on multiple occasions. Bedford's Female Athlete of the Year, Carrie Baker. Bedford's Male Athlete of the Year was Luke Campbell. Luke competed in football, basketball, and baseball this year. Luke hit 20 career home runs in baseball, and he had a county best 7 this past spring. In 2 years at Bedford of playing football, he amassed over 1,100 receiving yards. Bedford's Male Athlete of the Year, Luke Campbell. From Chestnut Ridge, their Female Athlete of the Year, and I see her right in front of me tonight, Mackenzie Feather. Mackenzie competed in soccer, basketball, and softball this year. She led the Lady Lions in basketball scoring this past season, and also was a starter and a leadoff hitter for the District 5 AA softball champions, and then led it for the third time in soccer. Chestnut Ridge Female Athlete of the Year, Mackenzie Feather. Chestnut Ridge's Male Athlete of the Year is not here tonight. He's actually in California on an FBLA trip. And I was informed that he was going for first place or something, so I guess he has a little bit more important things to do tonight, but I do want to honor him. He is Tyler Dybert. Tyler competed in football and wrestling and track and field. He set the new county record for career wrestling wins with 138, and he set a single season school record at Chestnut Ridge this year with 41, and he also has a school record for pins with 72 in his career. He placed 7th in the state in his third trip to the state wrestling tournament. Chestnut Ridge Male Athlete of the Year, Tyler Dybert. Neither of Claysburg's athletes were here tonight, but I do want to recognize them as well. Their Female Athlete of the Year for the Lady Bulldogs was Kayla Brumbaugh. Kayla competed in basketball and softball this year. She stole 42 bases this spring and tallied 121 swipes in her career, and she was a key contributor to the District 6 championship for the Lady Bulldogs. Claysburg Kimmel, Female Athlete of the Year, Kayla Brumbaugh. Claysburg's Male Athlete of the Year was Zach Helzel, and Zach was unable to be here tonight, but I know his parents were here. I met them earlier. Zach competed in football and baseball. He tallied over 1,500 yards rushing, which led the local area and also was a school record this past fall at Claysburg. He also scored 28 touchdowns, which was tops among the local teams, and was a key contributor for the baseball team. Claysburg Kimmel Male Athlete of the Year, Zach Helzel. Both of Everett's area Athlete of the Year are here tonight, and I see them. Aubrey Phipps was our Female Athlete of the Year. She's down here to my right. Aubrey competed in golf and basketball this year. She passed the 1,000 career mark as a junior last year, and she followed that up with another strong season, leading the Lady Warriors to a District 5 AA championship. Everett Area's Female Athlete of the Year, Aubrey Phipps. And then right down here in front of me, Everett Area's Male Athlete of the Year, Kyle Droz. Kyle competed in football and baseball this year. A standout player in both sports, he posted a record of 7-0 and an ERA of 1.45 as a pitcher this spring, while hitting just under 450 at the plate for the Sidling Hill League and Aaron County Conference champion Warriors. Everett Area Male Athlete of the Year, Kyle Droz. Next up is Hope for Hyman Charter School, and both of their athletes were able to make it tonight. Their Female Athlete of the Year is Jalissa Snyder. Jalissa competed in cross country and basketball for the Lady Hornets, and then in the spring she came up to Bedford and competed on the Lady Bison track team. She was a state qualifier in cross country at Hope for Hyman and in track and field at Bedford. Hope for Hyman Female Athlete of the Year, Jalissa Snyder. Standing right next to Jalissa is Hope for Hyman's Male Athlete of the Year, Jordan Bingman. Jordan competed in soccer, basketball, and tennis this year. In soccer, he was unfortunately injured for much of the season, but he served as an inspiration and came back to lead the Hornets to the district semifinals. Also in soccer, he tallied 46 goals in his career. Hope for Hyman Male Athlete of the Year, Jordan Bingman. Next up, Northern Bedford, and their Female Athlete of the Year was Maria Snyder. Maria competed in cross country, tennis, and track and field this year. She turned the rare feat for the second consecutive year by claiming individual district championships in both cross country and tennis in the same season. And she had another solid track season as the Lady Panthers were undefeated in team competition. Northern Bedford Female Athlete of the Year, Maria Snyder. And down here at the other end is Northern Bedford's Male Athlete of the Year, Taylor Pressel. Taylor competed in football, basketball, and track and field this year. He caught 36 passes as part of a strong three-man receiving group in football for the Black Panthers. He went over the 1,000-point career mark for the Panthers in basketball, and rounded out his high school accomplishments by placing 4th in the state in the Class AA triple jump this spring. Northern Bedford Male Athlete of the Year, Taylor Pressel. Last but not least would be Tussey Mountain, and they're both here tonight as well. Their Female Athlete of the Year was Olivia Claycomb. Olivia competed in soccer and basketball this year. In soccer, she scored 27 goals and tallied 54 goals in her career, which are both school records. She also contributed to the basketball team, which reached the district finals. Tussey Mountain's Female Athlete of the Year, Olivia Claycomb. And all the way at the end down here on my left is Tussey Mountain's Male Athlete of the Year, Eric Huzik. Eric competed in football and basketball this year. In basketball, he was the first of 5 local players that crossed the 1,000 point mark this past winter. He was also a key contributor to Titans in both sports as they made the district playoffs in each. Tussey Mountain's Male Athlete of the Year, Eric Huzik. All of these young men and women are up here tonight because of those athletic achievements that I just detailed and many others. But they are also very well-rounded in their academics and their hard work in the classroom, as well as their schools and their communities in support and leadership. Before I announce this year's Scholar Award winners, I'd like to ask all of those out there to give these fine student athletes a well-deserved round of applause. Thank you. Without further delay, I'll announce our Female Scholar Athlete of the Year, and she is Maria Snyder of Northern Bedford. And I also want to point out, I was holding this for the end here, I also want to point out that Maria is up here for the 3rd time as Northern Bedford's Athlete of the Year, and I think that's quite an accomplishment, and I don't think that's happened very often in the history of this award, so another congratulations to her. And our male scholar athlete was unable to be here tonight. That's Luke Campbell of Bedford. So again, I want to thank the committee and, for allowing us the time to do this. One final thing from our athletes here, I'm going to ask you all to go outside. We're going to get some photos. And if there's any parents or family members out there, it might be a good time to get a photo too. I certainly want to thank you all for being here tonight, and congratulations.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, scholar athletes from all our different schools. I'm glad that we have that as part of our ceremony. Good job as always, Ryan. All right.